Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Sarah Delaney. I'm with OpenSciEd, and you are here for AI, Hindrance or Helper, supporting teacher practice with AI and OpenSciEd. And I have a colleague, Renee Affolter, that's also here. She's going to help monitor the chat, so feel free to use the chat as we go. And we're going to start right off the bat by giving you the link to the folder that has a PDF of the slides and a bunch of reference documents that I'm going to be using throughout the webinar. So we're going to go ahead and start as people are continuing to come in by kind of getting a sense of the temperature in this Zoom room. How do people currently feel about AI? Do they feel it's a hindrance or a helper? And we're talking about your professional life. And you can have both. You can say it's a hindrance for these reasons and a helper for these reasons. And we're going to come back to this at the end and see if it moves at all. But if you have access to the chat, go ahead and put in there hindrance or helper. And it looks like I need to, oh, good. You on that, Renee? Thank you. All right. So far, I see a lot of positive. Wow, we're starting off real positive for this crew that showed up today and to do this webinar. So far I'm seeing a lot of helpers, which is great. And I think hopefully you'll see a little bit more of how it can even help you more. And then we have some neutrals. And I think neutral is a good place too. If you are like, you know what, I haven't even had a chance to have an opinion. I haven't sat down and thought about what my true opinion is yet. Today will be a great opportunity for you to kind of build some foundational information and then come up with it. All right. And then for people who are saying, but what about the students? Like, it's great for me. I will say a little promotion for next week. Today's webinar is really going to be focused on your use of AI in your teaching practice, and we'll talk about this more. So next week, I'm going to be doing one that's focusing on student use. So what does that mean for student learning? So we're going to talk about what we have. And in general, my sense was we're neutral or positive. So maybe by the end of it, you're actually going to say it's terrible, this is horrible, or maybe we stay where we are. So this is our plan. We'll talk a little bit about OpenSciEd and who we are. We're going to do AI 101 just to make sure we're all starting at like a common space that we can then build from. And then we'll talk about guidelines for AI use. And then I'm going to give you a ton of what I think are promising use cases. And I told Renee as I came on, I might have too much stuff in this webinar. I have too many examples. So we're going to see how far we get. And then if there's more, you have the slides, so you can definitely look at those use cases on your own. So this is our plan for today. So a little bit about OpenSciEd. If you are new to us, we are an innovative nonprofit organization, and we bring together world-class curriculum developers, education experts, science administrators, teachers, and philanthropic organizations, and we collaborate to create free, high-quality, NGSS-aligned science instructional materials and outstanding professional learning to go with that. What we are not is an AI expert. So that is not what our expertise is. We have been doing a lot of learning, and we're learning alongside others that would consider themselves AI experts. But I want to just note that today's session is really an introduction. It's not a technical training, and I do not have a degree in AI. So I'll point you to some places where if you're like, I need to hear from an expert, we can make sure you get to someone. Another important disclaimer is that AI is evolving rapidly, so quickly. So guidance that we might have in today's webinar, if you're watching this 3 months from now, might be completely irrelevant and outdated. So this is something where both the guidance and use cases change quickly. And then check local policies first. So make sure that you're paying attention to your district policies, what your technology leaders are saying, and check anything out before you use any of the tools discussed today. We want to make sure we keep you and your students safe. and then using trusted sources. It's really, there's so much information out there about AI. And so I would encourage you to refer to some reputable organizations for deeper expertise. This is a list of 6. If you're like, I don't even know which experts to start with. I know from myself, I pulled a lot from Teach AI when I was learning and gathering information, but there are a lot of organizations that are doing great stuff and provide great information for you. So those are the experts. So when I talk about like expertise on AI tools, we have done a lot of learning. This is not the world that we really live in, but where we bring a ton of expertise is in our own materials and the OpenSciEd curriculum. So we know a lot about that curriculum and phenomena-based learning and our approach to learning. And we know a decent amount about teaching practice because many of us have been teachers and we have the privilege of working with thousands of teachers and then learning and hearing from teachers as they use our materials. So what we're going to focus on today is what we think about as a productive overlap. So what's the productive overlap between all the AI tools, the OpenSciEd curriculum and instructional approach, and teaching practice? And that's why you're here. You're going to be thinking about, in my teaching practice, this might be a productive overlap, or this might be total garbage and not useful at all. And you're the only one who knows the answer to that. But I'm going to present some things that, from my understanding of teaching practice broadly, I think have some potential. And then I already made a commercial, but if you are interested in student learning, so that circle not being teaching practice, but student learning, that's really what we're going to be focusing on next week, is thinking about, okay, what does the AI mean for student learning? Okay, so that's a little introduction. Now let's talk about AI 101. So this is really, if you came and you're like, I don't really have an opinion because I've been too busy with other life stuff and I haven't even paid attention yet. This is the AI 101 for you. So first of all, what is AI? AI stands for artificial intelligence. It refers to programs or machines that simulate tasks that typically require human intelligence, such as recognizing patterns, making predictions, and generating content. And that's a pretty broad, wide definition. And it isn't new. So AI has been around for decades, and it's mostly been behind the scenes. So the field came about in the 1950s, and it was really focused on rules and logic. And then in the 1980s, we had fantastic fashion and also new machine learning emerges. So that was the 80s. This was computers trained on data, including like early adaptive learning systems and recommendation engines. And then in the 2000s, this is when we started to have something called deep learning, where there's advancements with neural networks inspired by the brain. So we started to see tools like speech recognition and image classification. If you think about all of our, are you a robot? Which of these things are motorcycles? Those kind of things, right? Leading into that. And then, so what's different now? AI is all over the place. You cannot look at your news feed without seeing something about AI. So why is it different now? And why is it getting so much attention? And it's because today we're talking about something called generative AI. So when we use the word AI, we're really talking about generative AI. This is where we create new content, whether that's text, image, audio, or video, and it's powered by something called a large language model, which is trained on massive data sets. I'm going to talk in a moment about the LLM, what a large language model is. And what's special about this is it produces outputs that feel conversational and human-like. So we hear all sorts of crazy stories about people feeling like they're in relationships with this generative AI. And I jokingly always talk about it being my best friend and how I'm always talking to it about everything. So this conversational human-like output is something that's really unique about it. So large language models, this is what it's working from. They're trained on massive data sets of text from books, websites, and other sources. Basically, these models read the entire internet, right? Like the entire internet, all the books, any book they can get their hands on, or the hands on, and that's what it's trained on. And it learns patterns and relationships between words, phrases, and concepts. And what happens, how it works, is it's generating text by predicting the most likely next word in a sequence. And it can summarize, translate, answer questions, write code, and create text in different styles. It's some of those AI experts like Teach AI that I showed have great little videos about what that means and how does that actually work. And they have examples from Shakespeare. And it's kind of crazy to think about predicting words or letters could lead to the kind of outputs we're seeing, but that's what's happening. And there's kind of a big black box between that, and that's part of the mystery of what's happening and some of the controversy. Some of the common AI tools, these are general purpose chatbots that you might have heard of. So ChatGPT, that's what I'm going to be referring to a lot, is the examples that I shared. I use ChatGPT with. Gemini is the one made by Google, Claude is Anthropic, and Copilot is Microsoft/OpenAI. And those, aside from those tools, if you've never used those tools, you probably still have interfaced with AI in some ways because so many applications and websites now have it built into their tools. And they use this sparkle emoji or some version of it to dictate the use of AI. So you might have seen, like at the bottom of the Zoom, we have it. You can see there's a little sparkle, but here the sparkle for Canva, AI, Gemini has it. Here, this is Google. You can see the little sparkle. So anytime you see those little sparkles, it's a symbol that's supposed to communicate that there's some sort of AI tool being used in that. So what are the strengths, given all that, what are the strengths and limitations of AI? And this is important to consider because later when we're thinking about productive uses, it's important to think about, well, is that in the strengths or is that a limitation? So strengths, speeding up repetitive tasks. It can work very fast. And so speeding up repetitive tasks is a big one. Summarizing and organizing information. So giving it a massive book or data set or set of content and say, summarize what's going on in here. That's something it's really good at, that whole predicting next text kind of thing, and recognizing patterns. So these are some really big strengths. Also, gathering information from the internet. A lot of people are using AI, they're using ChatGPT instead of Google search. And I find myself doing this from time to time too. Instead of going to Yelp or Google to search a restaurant, I'm asking Chat, what would be a good restaurant for this? So a lot of gathering information from the internet, and then brainstorming dialogue. So this back and forth of a prompt and then, but what about this? Or if you change that, or you added this information. So that back and forth is one of the strengths too. Lots of limitations, though, that are important to pay attention to. So one, it's not good at authentic sense making. It's not able to say, like, well, this is more important than that. It's really just looking at the data set. So the determination of what is important is really what we do and are able to do. So trying to rely on it to do the sense making, it's not strong at that. Also, not good at math and logic. So AI predicts numbers and steps using text pattern, not from actual calculations. So if you need to do math and do calculations with math, you don't go to a tool that's good at reading, right? You go to and use a calculator, and you're going to need to use your own brain with that. So relying on it to do math and logic is a problem. And same with interpreting images and videos. So AI tools are trained on text, and so they often misinterpret graphs, visuals, and dynamic processes. And then this is a big one. It's only as good as its data source. So it's pulling information from the internet. And if the internet has, skewed or inappropriate or incorrect information, that will just be fed right into the output. So it's only as good as the data source, and it reflects the quality, accuracy, and biases of the data it was trained on. So that's a big thing too. You've probably heard some concerns, but some big concerns. Accuracy and trust is a big one. It can create plausible but wrong information. Sometimes we call these hallucinations. And the outputs can lack transparency. Like, we don't know what the source of the information was. So where did those ideas or facts come from? There is some citation of sources, but sometimes you'll even find that the citations are fictional. They're not real citations or real sources. So this accuracy and trust is a big one. Bias and fairness, it can reinforce stereotypes or inequities present in training data. And then in general, there's unequal access to these tools, just like there's unequal access to technology and the internet. So this is just widening existing gaps. There's privacy and safety concerns, right? We don't know where this data is being taken or who else has access to it. And so there's big problems with student data or personal data. So it's something to pay attention to. And then we have intellectual property and data ethics. So lots of concerns here. One of them right now, the New York Times has a big open lawsuit against ChatGPT because they claim that large learning model used the entire content of New York Times articles, like millions of articles, to train its model on without paying for it or getting permission for that use. So there's a lot of open questions about intellectual property and data ethics. And then there's a big concern with environmental impact. All of these systems consume a significant amount of energy and water resources. And so this is a big problem that we're going to continue facing as the use increases. I wanted to bring those up because they're important. They're important to consider. I'm not diving into those and don't claim to be expert on any of those. If you want to learn more about those concerns or those potential challenges, these are the good sources that I would go to. Okay, that was my AI 101 to make sure that we're all starting in the same place. And now we're going to talk about 4 things to consider for safe and effective AI use in the OpenSciEd classroom. So those experts that I listed, or if you look in general across the education world, you'll see, dozens and dozens of different guidelines and ways to think about use of AI. What I did is I utilized AI to help us think about what's the overlap between all of these different sets of guidelines, what common things do we see, and then what of those make sense for teachers who are using this in OpenSciEd classrooms. And so from all that, I have 4 guidelines that I'm presenting to keep in mind during the use of AI. So one is purpose, one is safety, one's access, inclusion, and integrity, and one's human oversight. In the folder and in LinkedIn here, you'll find a document that has kind of this blown up even more with guiding questions for teachers and students. And it also has the sources that I use to compile this. But if you don't have a set of guidelines that your district is giving you that you're supposed to follow, this might be a good starting point. And we're going to talk about those 4. And then I promise we're going to get into use cases. So the first one is purpose. And this is AI is only useful when it supports a clear instructional or professional goal. And this is important because without purpose, AI can distract from sense making, it can waste our time, and it can hurt the environment. So if we're just doing it to do it just because it can or it's cool, but there's no real purpose to it, then that is a problem. And we're going to dive deep into purpose as we start thinking about the use cases. So we'll come back to this, but in general, before you use AI, you should think about, does it advance learning? Does it save me time? Does it deepen my understanding? And if it doesn't do those things, then we should probably skip it. It's probably not going to be a good use. The next one is safety. So this is both privacy, security, and risk awareness. And it means protecting student and teacher privacy, checking for errors or bias, and following policies. And this matters because AI can introduce misinformation, unsafe content, and it can expose privacy risks. So what you should do, never enter student identifiable information into AI. You should cross-check outputs against trusted sources and check your district's AI policy. So an example of this is if you have a spreadsheet that has all your students' names, their student ID, their birth date, and then you have like exit ticket information from them, and you're wanting to summarize that exit ticket information, you should never upload the whole spreadsheet because it has identifiable information. Instead, before you're uploading it, it's really important to be thinking about what information you need to be deleting or hiding so that you're protecting your students' information and you're protecting yourself, because that goes against a lot of education law and privacy things. And so really being careful about what we're uploading into AI, because we don't know exactly where it goes afterwards, and there's not really a boundary to where it won't go. The next is access, inclusion, and integrity. So this means ensuring that AI use benefits all students fairly and respectfully, checking for cultural, language, and ability bias. And this is a big deal. If you are sending students and asking them to do something at home, and some students have access to the internet and AI tools, and some students do not, and you're looking at their products in the same way and not thinking about that, that could be a really big problem about fairness and access and inclusion. So thinking about that all students have access to it if you're going to use it at all, and then checking for cultural, language, or ability bias. And we don't want to reinforce inequities. So this is really important to do. And you can make sure that this isn't happening by reviewing the outputs for bias and then only using tools that all students can access if you decide to use tools at all. And we're going to talk, like I said, more about that in the next week. The last one is human oversight. And this one is so important. And this is that teachers remain the final decision makers in planning, feedback, and instruction, or any use of AI. So this is a human in the loop is kind of what you'll hear also in the field, is keeping a human as part of the creation of content. So without teacher judgment, AI errors go unchecked and critical thinking is lost. So what you should do is always use AI for drafts or ideas, but adapt and approve before sharing with students. And I'm going to share just a quick story about, I was using AI to summarize a long report. It was a big, long report, and I was trying to make a summary response document. And I wanted exact quotes to be pulled from this report. And this is in the strengths, like this is where AI should be succeeding. It's reading this big, long report. I'm telling it, I want quotes directly pulled from this report that support these ideas. And it pulled me some quotes, and I was like, these are amazing. These are great quotes. And I said, great, can you give me the page numbers so that I can cite what page they were on? It gave me page numbers, and it looked great. And I was feeling so good about this report and these quotes I found. And before I started, getting ready, the final check before I was going to share it with others, I was like, let me just go check and make sure that those quotes are actually there. And they were not. They were not there in any way, shape, or form. And this is despite the AI bot telling me, yes, they're real quotes. I pulled them. Here's the page number. They did not exist in any shape or form. And I was shook. I was shook of like, it was so convincing and so confident, and it looked like it was the right quote. So this is where the human oversight is so important, of never forgetting to check and make sure that what is coming out is actually valid. Okay, so those were the 4 big things that we're thinking about when we're thinking about using it safely. And we're going to dive further into this purpose one. This idea of to use or not to use. And then we're going to start looking at some examples here. So some considerations to guide usage. My suggestion, based on my usage and how I've been thinking about this productive overlap, is use AI if you can answer yes to one of more of these. So A, will using AI create a clearer or higher quality product? Will it complete the work more efficiently than doing it without AI? And will it expand my thinking or knowledge? So if you can answer yes to one or more of these, that's a really great start. And that could be like, that's a good use of AI. But I think there's a really, really important 4th thing here, is being able to answer no to this one. Could the use of AI harm authentic connections within the learning community? So this means connections between student and student, or connections between student and teacher. So if you are using AI and it's making your work faster and more efficient, but it's harming your connection with your students, then I would say it's not a good use of AI, because this connection with students and connections between students is so critical to the learning experience and is what makes teaching and school and teachers so important, this connection. So we're going to practice using this. But to give you like a little example of why this authentic connection is so important, I want you to imagine the last time you needed customer support and you're trying to pay your cell phone bill and it looks wrong, or you want to change something. You need customer support of some sort. And you see that there's a bot that's going to answer your questions, whether it's on the phone or it's on the side of your panel. And at first you're like, great, this is going to be so fast. I don't have to talk to a real human. It's so great. And you start engaging with the bot. And it does not take long for the bot to not answer you completely, not fully understand what you need, or just give you answers that don't feel right. And then it's not long and you're saying, I need an agent. Put me through to an agent. 000. Give me an agent. How do I talk to a person? Because you want that authentic connection. You need to feel that you're seen, that you're heard, your needs are heard, that the complexity of your situation is being understood by a real human. So this power of the authentic connection is so important. And when we interrupt that, students know, and they will disengage just as much as I get very annoyed at the bot that doesn't know what I want. So this is something that we're going to continue coming back to, is this authentic connection and how important it is. Okay, so now we're going to start looking at the examples and the promising uses. I kind of broke this down into a bunch of different work areas. And so if we think about these different work areas like planning and preparation, adult learning, supporting students, customizing curriculum, assessment and grading, and differentiation. So all these little areas to explore. We're going to go through these and I'm going to give you some examples and we're going to think about those to use or not to use. So we'll dive first into planning and preparation. And I'm going to give you a scenario and I'm going to show you the outputs, and then we're going to all reflect on, for each of these, did we answer yes to any of these and did we answer no to this? And then that will help us think about, is this a promising use or not? So the first one is making material planning easy or easier. And so thinking about specifically lab prep. And we know that this is an area that is challenging and it takes a lot of time. So I thought that I would see what our little AI bot could do for us. So this is in chat and I'm going to show you, and we're not going to read all these. I'm going to just kind of show you the dialogue I had and I'm going to show you the outputs. So I went to ChatGPT and I said, I'm a 7th grade teacher and I need help planning materials necessary for teaching this unit. I uploaded the unit, the whole teacher edition. I have 3 sections of 28 students. I teach science 5 days a week, and I do my materials prep after school. I don't have time between sections, so I can't reuse my materials. And here's the materials list. And it said, got it. And it summarized everything that I had said. And it said, here's how to approach this. It gives me first key prep alerts. It says there's advanced prep needs. Some lessons are going to require me to start materials early, and it points out lesson 2, 4, 10, and 11. And in these, I'm going to need to do something a few days in advance or 35 days before teaching. So that's a huge, great, thank you. The second thing it gave me here was consumable materials. So it rolled up and did the math, but watch the math, right? It did the math for me on the materials I would need for my 3 sections. So here's what I would need for lesson 1, lesson 2 to 3, 4, 10, and 11. So it goes through and is looking at all the investigation lessons and what materials I would need. And then it tells me my durable, reusable materials. So that already, I'm feeling like that I'm going to have to check and make sure that the math is right before I go out and buy that much spinach out of my own pocket. I'm going to make sure that's not too much spinach or not enough spinach, right? So I'm going to check the math, but this feels pretty handy. And then it gives me some guidance about prep workflow. It says set up 3 parallel sets of consumables in the morning, after school, reset everything, label bins by section, and then batch tasks. And it gives me some ideas to batch. And then it asks, can I build you a lesson by lesson material table? And I said, yes, you can do that. So it gave me a lesson by lesson material table. And then it also, after that, I was like, you know what I would want is I want this to be mapped onto a calendar. So I said, create a plan where I do more prep work on Friday afternoon to get myself ready for the week to come and have me starting my unit on September 8th. So it said perfect. And then it gave me this weekly prep plan. And I, as a teacher, would have loved this, right? Like being able to be like, okay, so I'm starting on September 8th, on Friday, September 5th, the week before I start, here's what I need to do. And then the next week, here's my Friday prep. This is during the week, I'm needing to do these things. And this I feel like would be handy. I did not go through and correct it yet. Like already I would say, actually, I didn't see the you told me to watch out for the prep that needs to happen before the unit starts. Make sure to map that in as well. So that would be where I would go back and forth and do a dialogue. But this is what we might look like for using it for materials planning. So in the chat, what would you say? Is this yes? Which letters of these do you think would be yes? And is there a no to D? Give a moment and think about this potential use. Right. Okay, so I see some yeses to A and yeses to B. I think that's how I see it too. Like clear and high quality product. I saw someone like we need to check for accuracy to make sure that's true. And then it's not going to expand my thinking or knowledge. Like this is just making a list. It's not deepening my knowledge. And then it is not harming my authentic connection. This is just lab prep. We're talking about buying materials and putting it in bins. This is not interrupting or affecting my student connection. So based on that, I think this has potential. Like you would need to change it for your connect, your specific scenario, how many sections you would need, and checking it to make sure that it's accurate is really important. But I think that there's some potential there. Here's another idea. Photocopying. And let's see, I'm going to see, I don't know. I'm not sure how to get rid of this red, but we're just going to be okay with the red. Okay, so photocopying. Oh, watch out. So in this one, I said, same thing. I'm a 7th grade teacher. Here's the teacher edition. I have 2 sections, 28 and 32 students. I need to plan my photocopying for this unit that I'm going to teach. Make a list of what I need in total and pace it out so I can do my copying on Fridays for the following week. Assume I teach 5 days a week, starting on a Monday. And so it gave me a summary and said, this is how we're going to tackle it. And before I got this product, I clarified that I use science notebooks. So that was important to tell it as well. So here is my list of the things that I need for each lesson, how many of them, the title of them. And then I can see like this one I'm reusing from lesson 1. And I have this then built on my Friday by Friday copy schedule. So week 1, I need these things. So I'm copying all these things to be ready for that week. Week 2, I'm copying these things. So this gives me a plan for how I'm going to be doing copying. If I had like some schools have like copy shops that you can send orders to, I could give them my order and it would be organized so nicely. So let's do the same thing. A, B, C, and D. Is this a yes to A, B, C? And is it a no to D? Molly's saying it's the same as last one. We have a yes to A and B, yes to B, no to D. Great. Okay, so I thought like clear, higher quality product. Like the idea of a roll up of all the printing you have to do seems like a good product. That's definitely faster than it would have been for me to do it by myself. Definitely going to need to check work. Like we're going to have to make sure that that's correct and those handouts are real handouts and the quantities make sense. Not expanding my thinking and it's not harming students. So I would put this on potential promising use as well. Okay. This one I was excited about too. This is still in planning. We get this email a lot. People are often asking us, what do I do? I have, you're written for 45 minutes and I have a block schedule. How do I do this? So I decided to try this one out too, right? So the unit is written for 45 minutes, but my school is switching to an 80-minute block schedule. I teach sections 1, 2, and 5, and then I give a lot of detail that I found from some place on the internet of a sample block schedule. So I give a lot of detail about what this is. I also gave it some suggestions. I said, help me adjust the pacing for the unit. Consider trimming navigations that end each day and start the next day. When building this new pacing, pay attention to investigation timing and assessment placement. Also consider where there's take-home work. And, the nice thing about this is I could have written this and been like, oh, actually preserve those navigations. So you trim too many of them. They're important to the instructional model. Only trim the ones that just seem like they're continuation and like they're kind of openers. So we could go back and forth. But this is what it gave me. So it gave me key considerations for the shift. So in general, it gave me a roll up of like the unit should fit into 12 blocks, which is about this much time. Sorry. It gave me some ideas about how I might think about trimming or combining lessons. And then it talked about labs. So here, this was the considerations. And then this was the suggested block pacing. So block 1, I would be doing lesson 1. Block 2, I would be doing lesson 2 and 3, and block 4. So there's some interesting things that I could start brainstorming from. Like if I was going to go back to this dialogue, I probably would say, I don't want to have students finish doing their reading at home. What I meant by the home stuff was when they're supposed to go and talk to community members or they're supposed to do any information at home. That's what I meant. Don't make me make homework here. So I would go back and forth with it. But this at least gives me a place where I can start building a plan that then I can polish and finalize on top of it. So let's do our little test here. Considerations to guide usage for this one. Great. Okay, so I see some less, like maybe this will be a clearer or higher quality product. I see some in the chat and I have this too of we're going to need deep human review here, right? Like this is giving me a starting point. There could be big errors in here. I would say one thing that I did with this before I started this is I also uploaded our teacher handbook and our instructional model and like our approach to learning. So you can train it to think about don't interrupt sense-making moments and don't interrupt key discussion. So there is some training you can do. And some people might be saying, I wouldn't need it to do this. And that is great as well, because not using it when you don't need to use it is a great thing to do. So we're going to take a quick pause and then we're going to try it out. And I want to hear what people think that they might consider being an effective prompt for planning. So how to talk to AI. You might have seen a formula that I've been kind of using in my prompts that I've showed you. This is a handy acronym that people use. It is role. So who should the AI act as? Input, what background info or data should be provided? Steps, what process or structure should AI follow? Expectations, what does a successful answer look like? And then narrowing, what constraints or boundaries should be applied? So having a productive prompt that has all this information in it will make better outputs from the AI. And so what this might sound like is act as a high school science teacher. Who is this product for? It's for me, the high school science teacher. The input is I'm going to be teaching this unit to 2 sections of 30 students each. I uploaded the teacher edition, and I'm going to provide the lesson level materials list and safety notes. So I'm giving it a bunch of stuff. This is where I mentioned, like, I've also given it the teacher handbook and given it the instructional model document and been like, you need to know this stuff too. And then steps, group the materials by investigation, scale quantities, add distribution tips and safety notes. Expectations, the list should be bulleted, easy to follow, organized by investigation, and narrowing. Assume no glassware can be reused between sections. Keep the focus on efficient teacher prep and equitable student access. So that is kind of how we talk to AI, and getting it all right at the front point. Like, maybe I don't actually know the right expectations. AI will be like, would you like me to make this? And you could be like, no, what else could you make me? Like, you can go back and forth. You don't have to have all of these things. But the more you're able to define these different parts, the more productive it can be in providing an output that's useful to you. Okay, so let's just one prompt. What's one prompt or use of AI that you're thinking that might be useful for planning? So we just did a bunch of examples of planning. We're going to go to another facet of teaching, but in the chat, why don't you take a moment and see if you can throw together a sample prompt that kind of follows this formula. And I see Catherine is saying, I feel like there's a point where checking the work is more work than doing it myself. And that is such a good, when you're there, you're like, no, this is no longer useful. This was a waste of my time. That's important to know when you're like, this is not going to be a good use of time. So as people are typing, Scott said in the chat that part of his learning has been knowing when to cut bait early, like when to give up and be like, this is not worth it. And that's also such a good thing too. And one thing that I've experienced myself and have read is that there's a limitation to how long. It's like talking to your children when you're giving them a lecture about something. As you're lecturing them, you're like, oh, the attention span is waning. And AI actually does that. Like, if you continue on it too long, the quality of the responses will actually get worse. Like, it has an attention span. So sometimes I'll stay in it and be like, no, I just need the right prompt. I just need the right prompt. And we're actually getting farther off than closer. And that's a real thing too. Okay, so here we have a scaffolded worksheet. Okay, these are, I see a lot of the planning stuff here is on customizing and differentiating. And so that's going to be, we're going to talk about that in a moment. Right, alignment between district goals and my calendar, and like thinking about them match. That seems like a productive way too. Great. Okay. We're going to keep going through some examples. And this is, I will tell you right now, this is what we're going to go through the different sections of just kind of thinking about these different prompts, seeing if any of these are resonating with people, if people are like, yeah, that could be helpful. And for people like Julie is like, I don't know if I really want to trust this response. Like, That's fine. Like if it's not if it's not useful to you, no one, just say you're saving the environment and you're not going to use AI, and that's totally great and wonderful. And if it's not going to help you, then we definitely don't need to be forcing the use of it anywhere. Okay, so here's some other ideas that I thought about. One was this idea of adult learning. So that's the content or the curriculum. So one would be building teacher content knowledge. So I'm a veteran physics teacher and I have an advanced degree in physics and extensive teaching experience. I'm being asked to teach this unit that has earth science embedded in it. Help me understand the earth science content because it's new to me. So this is something we see in our high school courses. We have these integrated courses and people are saying like, I've never once taken an earth science class ever. And I have, a PhD in physics, but I would need some more help with the earth science content. So I uploaded the teacher's edition and I added this. And it gave me a breakdown of the concepts in the unit. So in general, like we have Earth's geological records of impact, kind of like the summary of the content here. With this the KT, boundary and mass extinction. And it gives me some tips as a physics expert, like some things I can think about, including let earth science be messy. Unlike physics, earth systems often have overlapping competing processes, which I thought was a funny tip of thinking about my identity as a physics person versus earth science learner. And then it tells me where to focus. So lessons at 2, lessons 10 to 12, and then this final task, right? A beautiful synthesis of physics and planetary science. So then it asks if I want a quick reference guide. And I was like, actually, I want that. But can you also give me background knowledge and videos I can watch to deepen my understanding as an adult learner, like at an adult level? And so it gave me this beautiful curated guide with videos. And then this is where all of the like checking and everything that people are saying in the chat is a problem. Is I went and these videos sounded so great and I clicked on the first one and the video is not available anymore because it was not a real video. And I said, your links don't go to videos that exist. And it said, you're absolutely right. Let me fix that for you. And it gave me a new document. And guess what? There was more videos in there. So you can see in here, here's my document. There is still value here, right? Like some of the links were right. So here's lesson 8. If I want to deepen my own knowledge, here's some links that did work. But then down here, this reading wasn't a real reading. This was a broken link. But even from the title, I could find the link or what I think was probably what it was trying for. So this could be really helpful. And also the importance of keeping a human in the loop is always there of it wasn't perfect. So I wouldn't want to do this and give it to a student because there's errors here, right, that I would need to check first. Great. So it sounds like someone is like, I could use that support. And I myself was like, this is kind of the summary support that I need as well. So I thought this would be more efficient than doing it without AI, like summarizing what is the earth science and how would I distill it so that I can understand it. It definitely could expand my thinking or knowledge. It's helping me learn the content. And since this is my own learning, it's not going to harm connections with students or the student or the learning community. So I think that this was a potential positive use. I'm going to show another one that's like my general content knowledge. What about learning the unit as a whole? So this is better understanding the unit flow and scope. We have so much information in our teachers editions, and one of the challenges is it's almost too much information to kind of make sense of. So one thing I thought about was, what if I took and wanted to have this what words we encounter and words we earn, this map of the vocabulary development. And I also took the where are we going and not going for each lesson. So this is in every single lesson. And I wanted to have the AI across the unit summarize all of the where are we going and not going sections. So it would be easier for me to understand and visualize across the unit where we're going and not going. And then I was like, you know what, actually, can you wrap the vocabulary into this description? What words do we earn and when, and what should we delay using? And so what it made I turned into this little handout, which I think is an interesting tool to think about the unit, right? The lesson arc of where are we going, not going, vocabulary we earn, and things that we're delaying, things that we're not using yet. So where we're not going, don't jump ahead to explaining photosynthesis or name glucose. Keep it puzzling. So I'm not doing glucose or photosynthesis, but I am using everyday words. And then on to like lessons 2 through 4 is focused on input. So here are the things that I'm looking at. I probably, if I was going to continue refining this, I would probably want to have lessons 2, 3, and 4 broken down. I like that they're wrapped up into inputs because it helps me see it in a new way that I haven't seen it before. But I think that I would, if I'm thinking about the vocabulary, it's important to know, am I delaying all completely, or am I at some point in the 2, 3, and 4 introducing any of these? So if you want to see that document in whole, it's in here, a big picture, where are we going, not going, in there. And so I think that, to me, this is useful because it makes a clearer, high quality product. It takes our dense content that exists in our teacher's edition, but isn't kind of put together side by side so I can see the flow of it. And it puts it together in that way. So I think it would make potentially a clearer, higher product, and it is going to be more efficient than if I did that by myself. And it's not gonna, I could expand my thinking or knowledge. I think me thinking about the unit, it helped me see how the big parts are kind of building together. And I don't think it's harming the authentic connections. Okay. Renee, anything we should talk about before I jump into supporting?
David had a question about like, would teachers need to upload the teacher edition content? And I think you should probably.
Yeah, I mean, yes. So we don't have a tool that we are sharing of like, import your questions into this tool. So in this case, for each of these situations, I uploaded the information. We're thinking about potentially, saying like, these are promising prompts, and here's the stuff that you would include if you're wanting to use a prompt like this. There's a lot of companies that are exploring using the use of our materials with AI. And since it's open content, the middle school is a completely open license. They're able to kind of play and have like a sandbox where they're exploring. So I think that that's where, when we go back to the things I said at the beginning of the webinar, of like, this is a fast moving world where like what is available now versus 3 months from now is going to be totally different. But right now we don't have a place where it lives already loaded up like that. But downloading like the PDF form, so if you give it a link to a Google Drive link, it's not going to be able to read it. So the best way to, feed it the information is to download a PDF and upload it. It can read the materials list. So the materials lists are URLs that are hosted on our website. So you can link that, but otherwise uploading the document, the PDF document, is the best way to do it. Okay, let's dive into supporting, and then I'm gonna jump around here. So I think supporting absent students, like getting into the student world, like I said, we're going to do more of that next week. But this one, I think about my own experience as a teacher and how a student would be like, oh, Miss Delaney, Miss Delaney, I'm going on vacation next week and I need a homework packet, and just being like, oh my, I don't know, like, I don't know what we're doing next week. Like, I don't know what to give you, and I don't know when I'm going to figure that out. So I was like, okay, I have a student who just told me they're going on vacation. They're going to miss school from September 22nd to October 3rd. Help me plan for supporting their learning. Now, I think some of the promising parts of this is like the value add nature of it. What I would have created myself for a student when I was in the classroom would have not been very valuable. This is going to make it more valuable. And so I'm going to show you what it made. It made me, first, some guiding principles that I thought would be interesting that you could continue refining. This was a student-friendly one-pager you could give to them before they leave. So it's written in encouraging language that helps them know what to do when they're gone. I think what was promising about this is like, here are the things you should do and think about, and then also knowing what they're going to miss and a support plan. It also was like, do you want me to write a parent letter that you could give to the parents so that they know what to watch and make sure their students are doing while they're gone? I'm like, that sounds lovely too. So like checking for quality of all of this is important, but just I think about like the value add of, is this plan better than what I would have come up with on my own? Maybe, possibly, yes. And then I think that there's a piece to this of like, when you come back, this was in the student letter, when you come back, we'll meet quickly so we can catch you up, and you'll compare your driving question log to the driving question board, and we're going to, join the final lessons. So this is something that I feel like this is, for me, clearer and higher quality than I would have done in that role if I was in the classroom. It's more efficient and with care, right? Like the student's going to be absent, not just feeding them a robot response that they do, but being careful about that. Okay, and the same thing, and now I'm going to jump to these. So that I have an idea of like, so you have there's an inclusion teacher that's there in your classroom and you want to support them in being able to better understand what's going on. That was a potential thing that I thought was valuable. And then some communication with families, like if your principal has a newsletter that goes out every Friday that you have to contribute to, we could have a sample draft that's written too. Okay, now I'm going to jump way ahead to an important punchline. Okay, so in all of my examples here, I'm not providing promising things when it comes to assessment or grading or differentiation. I did not add that as a promising use in my mind. And I'm going to tell you why. And I know that this is problematic because if I think about my own teaching experience, I would have been like, if I could outsource this grading, that would be lovely. I would love to do that. Or I feel like I'm never getting to all the levels of my students and what they need. I would like to outsource that. So it makes sense that we would want to do it because there's such heavy lifts. But this is where connection matters most. So like feedback isn't just comments, it's also how students know their thinking is seen and valued. And differentiation isn't just different leveled text or different worksheets at the right level. It's also knowing that whole student and what they need. And so I think that this is important to think about, and just remembering that chatbot and that chatbot not being what you needed when you were needing customer support. So if a student feels like the feedback or support or differentiation that they're getting is automated, it's going to result in them disengaging. They're going to want you, your teacher, their teacher, knowing them as a real person. So this is a place where I think those two areas are the most concerning to think about automating. So my proposal would be that use AI for the tasks that don't touch that teacher-student relationship. Use it to plan your copy list, use it to plan your labs, all the things that take your time, but it's not at the crux of the most important thing that you do. And then reinvest that saved time into doing the assessments or sitting beside the students or building that trust and doing, the celebrating the growth that no bot can. And when grading feels like a heavy list, because it is and it's hard, it's important, a valuable next step would be not AI, but instead an assessment audit. Like, what are you grading? Why are you grading it? Does it strengthen connection and move learning forward? And if it's not, then maybe it's not the right thing to do. And that's where I would promote. We have a brand new set of on-demand resources that has a huge section on assessment and grading and about how to make it meaningful and manageable with lots of content there and supports. And then differentiation, that's new resources coming soon. We're building that out next. So if you haven't yet been there, and if you're like, man, I really came to this webinar hoping that I was going to get help with using AI to grade, I would encourage you to think about using AI in different ways, and then coming and doing some thinking about how you can approach grading and potentially revamp that part of your practice. Okay. I think for now, like we're at our end, I would encourage you, if you're curious about the ones that we didn't have time for, I would encourage you to just look at the slides and look at the sample prompts and see if they might be useful. Right now, I'm going to ask, where do we stand now? Hindrance or helper? How do we feel? Did we move? Did you move at all? Or are you still like, I'm still neutral? Or I'm still like, it's all right. So in the chat, if you want to share hindrance or helper, and if there was any movement and why. So I'm seeing some neutral, still good. Yes, share these slides. I also will upload this recording so that you can share the recording too. And I thank you so much. I'm grateful that I got to do this learning, and thank you for letting me share my learning. And this is continuing to evolve. And we look forward to seeing what teachers do with AI and how we can make sure that it's improving the learning for students and the experience for teachers. But thank you so much for coming and for your time.